Today on the Leadership Puzzle, we're thrilled to welcome Nir Megnazi. Nir and I first met about a year ago, and we became immediate friends. Um, and we could spend hours together, and I think you're going to enjoy this. Not only is Nir an accomplished leadership coach, emotional intelligence expert, but he's also a leader with over 2 decades of global experience. I know he is passionate about empowering leaders to help them drive impact through self-awareness, empathy, and strategic decision making. Nir's insights on leadership are going to really help you with some practical ways, but they're also going to help inspire you. So let's get ready for a deep dive into the art and science of emotional intelligence with a true thought leader. Nir, thank you so much for coming on the Leadership Puzzle. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure and honor to be on your podcast.
I'm always interested in people's leadership journey, and you certainly have a very unique career. Was there a defining moment in your career that impacted your leadership approach? Because you didn't start in HR, so something clicked and said, "Oh, this is really important to me." So tell the audience a little bit about your journey.
Yes, I would say that. So I'll start from my HR role as a leadership coach at Intel, and I'll go back. I was for 20 years an engineering manager and an engineer at Intel in various roles and positions and parts of the company. But even before that, I was an officer in the Israeli Defense Force. And I think my first fundamental leadership lesson came from there. When you finish officer school, you get your ranks, and then you get assigned to a unit. And I was assigned to a combative unit. Now, a combative unit is a unit that is supposed to be at the front lines and fight and risk their lives. And the first time that I came to that unit, I was throwing orders here and there, expecting everyone to follow my orders because I'm an officer. I have the ranks. I have the power. And what I found is that people do not follow my orders. They say yes, but they're not really saying yes. They're always testing me. They want to see, am I worthy of being followed? That was a huge lesson that trust is earned. It's not given. Yeah, people will do what you say just because you have the authority, because you have the rank, you're the manager, you're the director, you're the VP, whatever. But would they do this enthusiastically or not? It's a different question.
Yeah.
And in the military, it just takes all that to the extreme because people are asking this one question. If my life is in danger, would I follow this leader? Would I risk my life for this person? When this officer shouts after me and runs towards the battle, would I follow?
Right.
Do I trust their experience? Do I trust their knowledge? Do I trust their leadership? And what is most relevant to the workplace is, do I trust them to care for me when things are bad?
Right.
And that I had to learn in the hard way
Hmm.
and to work very hard to earn my soldiers' trust.
It's interesting because every culture has some slightly different nuances on that trust building, and certainly there's a whole different level of leadership and trust when you're talking military and going into a potential life-threatening situation versus the corporate world where your CEO may think it's life or death, but it's not really, right? I remember I remember being in Russia in my when I was at Kimberly Clark, and I couldn't get the employees to do some of the basic things. It wasn't fun tasks, but there were tasks that I was being asked for. And I finally asked one of my employees who I had built a good relationship and a trust relationship, and he said, "Well, they're not afraid of you, Jeff." I was like, "I don't want them to be afraid of me." So, I had to go in every once in a while and pound on the table and and yell at them. And I never liked that, but it was that situational leadership. But
And a beautiful way to do that and even notice that, hey, I'm not commanding the trust that they are looking for, and being curious and courageous enough in the moment to catch one of those employees, say, hey, what's going on?
yeah,
What do I need to do? And then adapt accordingly.
right.
And it's absolutely interesting. Trust is how we assess trust, how we assess whether we can trust someone else is both personally and culturally.
Yeah.
Stephen M. R. Covey, in his book, The Speed of Trust, talks about the 13 behaviors that help you earn trust.
Mm.
So just as an example, one of them is give respect. So what does that mean? In every culture, respect looks differently.
Very different.
Very different. And I think Brene Brown has this story about trust when she said she had this team in Asia that the one time that she didn't send over the agenda for their meeting just didn't show up. And she was curious, hey, what's going on? Or like, we already have a relationship. Why didn't they show up? Or why were they angry? And they said, because you didn't send the agenda up front, so we couldn't prepare for this meeting. Hence, trust is broken. And for her, that was, whoa, okay, respect is different. It's disrespectful in the Asian culture to not send an agenda and allow them time to prepare for the meeting. So every behavior is based on culture, on the person themselves, how they were brought up, the company's culture.
Yeah. See, I think, it's interesting because we both worked at Intel. We didn't know each other until after we both left, so which is always just a fascinating thing to me. But Intel, not sending an agenda wouldn't prevent someone from showing up, right? So
Correct.
that company culture, sitting on top of that country and personal culture, is just as important.
Critical.
So, yeah,
Critical.
we could talk about culture a whole lot. Intel was a great learning ground on how to navigate culture, from what 30 different countries that we had people in.
Yes. And creating the conditions for success in all of these countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is fascinating to me.
Yeah. Intel was unique because anywhere you went, the Intel culture, when we were there, I mean, I think it's changed since we've left, but when we were there, the culture was so strong and vibrant. No matter where you went in the world, it was going to be fairly standardized. Whether it was Malaysia or Japan or Israel or Russia, US. I mean, it was you knew you were at Intel.
Yes.
There was nuances to that, and sometimes I had to interpret what it was always fun to be on calls with people from all different cultures, and whoever could interpret what each other was saying when there was misunderstanding, it always became a catalyst to making sure that everyone was on the same page, and that was always fun to do.
Yes. And what I attribute that to, that would probably be very useful for the leaders who are listening right now and want to impact the culture of their team, hopefully the company as well, is that Intel at its best time created a wide enough borders that kept everyone safe. You knew one thing: I'm going to be safe, I'm going to be respected. And now within these very wide borders, but very strict, like if you cross that border, that's it. You knew that the impact is going to be very, very hard, because these are what we call human principles that we don't want to violate. But when you felt safe, you felt protected. Now within that, you have a big margin to innovate, to be creative. You're not confined by one rule or this rule. You could speak up. You could engage in what we call healthy conflict. And again, all human relationships were within these borders and were allowed, and there were mechanisms for that. But overall, you felt safe, you felt respected, you felt that the company is investing in you. So well, I'm going to reciprocate. I'm going to invest back.
It's funny. I mean, you mentioned that word safe, and um, that's a newer concept than when I think you or I were first, in Intel. It was um, that healthy, unfiltered debate, and I mean, Andy Grove. If you haven't read, what was it, high impact leadership. I can't remember the name of his book, but I mean, he had a great leadership book, but it was um, uh, you know, we're gonna debate, and it may not feel safe though. That was interesting, but everybody who was successful in Intel was willing to step into that really uncomfortable. We're gonna disagree. Everybody's going to get everything out on the table, and then when the decision is made, we're going to commit, even if we continue to disagree. Right? So
Yes.
that's part of the. But you know, too many times, and I think this evolves into the conversation around emotional intelligence that I want to have with you. But too many times today, you can't have that disagreement and have that commitment because I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I'm being heard, even though, a really great leader opens that opportunity. I don't know that as many people today understand how to step into that realm where you and I can disagree, and we may never see eye to eye, but we can still, commit to the direction that we're going, and still be friends and go have a beer afterwards.
Exactly. I think that is the key. And a good friend of mine told me this story. The first time he went on a business trip to Israel, he arrived, he immediately went into one of the meetings. And in these meetings, people were shouting and screaming at one another, which is not uncommon for the Israeli culture. That's how we debate. We talk very loud, we're very emotional, we have all this hand movements, and we're passionate about what we want to say. He was sure that people are going to start throwing punches. But at the end of the meeting, the two guys who were fighting, one came to one another and just put a hand on there, let's get coffee. And they just left the room. So the key here is how can we communicate ideas, talk about what is in front of us and not about the person. When it's not personal, when we're both, instead of being at the two sides of the table, I think the key principle in navigating conflict effectively is, can we move from the other ends of the table to the same side, working on a problem, debating it together? But we're on the
Yeah,
same side. We're working for the same goal, and
right,
it's not personal.
right.
Most sometimes it is, but the more we can move out of blaming others, one another, and talking about the technical stuff passionately, we'll get to a solution, actually probably a better solution than each of us even thought about.
Yeah, for sure. So now, what do you think that how emotional intelligence, EQ, EI, I mean, how does that play into an individual's ability to step into that uncomfortable place of of that unfiltered debate, and keeping that debate on the topic or the issue, and not allowing it to be personal?
Not easy, I would say. Not easy. It takes first awareness and then practice. But let's go back and see what happens when we're lacking the awareness of our emotional map. What happens inside us while we're in conflict? When we're not aware, what happens is that we throw words, and I'll say this, we're not skilled in communication. We were not taught in college, university, wherever we went to school. Very few schools teach high performance communication, effective listening, great principles for a conversation, how to detach between the personal and the topic we're speaking about. Very few teach that. So when we come with our perspective, and we want to be heard, and we want to be right, because not being right is dangerous. And when I mean dangerous, it means that it will require me to do something different, maybe I have more resources, maybe being late with my project, with something, but I'll have to change. And change is perceived as something that we don't like, and it's dangerous. So when I come to this conflict, I want to be right. And if I'm not aware of this, then I will fight very hard to be right. Now, guess what? The other person has the same problem, right? So now you have two people that want to be right, and they will fight until one of them caves. So it's a power struggle.
Yeah.
Again, we're at the other end of the table instead of being at both at the same end, working on the problem. So if we want to shift that, we need to start build awareness of how we feel within our body while we're in conflict, and how uncomfortable change is with us. Many leaders are highly uncomfortable with change, not just change, all the what I call uncomfortable emotions. I don't believe in negative emotions. I believe in uncomfortable emotions. And the higher you climb up the leadership ladder, the more you experience those feelings, stress, overwhelm, pressure, the need to show up and deliver because everyone are looking at you, or the need to solve. So we have all these pressures, all these emotions that are within us, and they're highly uncomfortable. And all we're trying to do is get rid of those emotions, stop ourselves from feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Now, so if we're not skilled, we will try to stop to feel this way. So when we're in conflict, I will shout more louder. I will use my hands. I'll be so passionate just to force the other person to listen to me. Well, what I'm actually trying to do is to stop feeling that I'm challenged. It's uncomfortable.
And just raising your voice isn't necessarily going to allow someone to hear you better.
Exactly, because again, we're not skilled in high performance communication. We don't know how to listen in a deep way, in a way that is not disruptive, in a way that honors the other person. Doesn't mean that we agree with the other person, but can we just listen to them and understand their perspective? And to understand another person's perspective, we need to be aware of ourselves first, because we need to calm down our own uncomfortable emotions, or at least be with them. It's not even coming down, just be aware of them, so we can then decide how to react or how to respond, not just react.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. I give it in some of my workshops when we talk about conflict and also in influence. I found myself many times, if I'm in a conversation and someone tells me, that is stupid, I get triggered immediately. The word stupid triggers me emotionally, because in my CPU over here, along the years, I created this rule that this is stupid equals I am stupid. And that immediately threatens my sense of value. And in previous years, before I got trained, before I became a coach, before I did a lot of self-work to develop and be more aware, you could see, just like in the cartoons, this atomic bomb explode over my head, and I would go on the offense. Because whenever my sense of value is triggered, I go on the offense. And I'm losing control. I'm not in control.
Right.
It's like a script that comes out of me, an automatic script. I hear the word stupid, the button is pressed, the automatic script of attacking comes out, and I'll go and charge you. So these are some of the triggers, and each person has their own trigger that runs the script, and we go on the attack and we don't listen. And now again, then we see the fight.
So how does someone identify what that triggers? I mean, we all have them. We call it our hot buttons, right? Oh yeah, that's my hot button, or that's my pet peeve. There's kind of fun little words that we use to describe it, but it's something a little bit more sinister inside our thinking. So how can someone figure that out so that they can actually start doing something about it?
So it starts from failure. And what I mean it starts from failure is we leave a meeting and we feel so uncomfortable about the outcome or how we behave there. We caught ourselves in the moment screaming, shouting, or we've seen the face of the other person in the conversation and we're like, whoa, what have I done? We actually hurt someone with the way we reacted.
But you have to be watching and aware. You can't be on, your
Yeah,
device or head down in your computer on a meeting or whatever, distracted to be aware of what's happening to the other person.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is how kids learn empathy. They grab some toy from another kid and the other kid starts crying. And we know as humans, we have something in us that already understand, oh, that was wrong. Look at the reaction we create in them, and that builds empathy towards them. So back to our case. So I hurt someone and wow, I did something. So this is a time to ask ourselves, what happened there? Where did I lose control? Where did I choose my response? Or where did I just react? And then we go even backward and say, what did the other person say or do to trigger me? And most people that I've coached, when I ask them, what is a phrase or an action that someone else will do that will trigger you? In 30 seconds, they already come up with a list of about 4 or 5 things.
Interesting.
So we know. For me, it's anything that challenges my value, anything that challenges my ability to grow, to flourish, to get better. Everyone who challenges that triggers me. I can feel the trigger. Let's do a short experiment, Jeff. Just
Okay.
tell me something about what I just said and say that it's stupid. And just look what happens to me, because the trigger always remains. My reaction to the trigger will be different, but you could see the trigger.
Nir, I think that idea of everyone having a trigger is stupid. I mean, I just don't believe it. I think it's just new weird stuff that people are trying to put on to everyone to make them feel less.
So I don't know if you saw this, but I like my entire center just shot up over here, and I actually had to control myself.
Yeah, you sat up a little bit and oh,
And I
interesting.
did. This is not role playing. This is real time triggering, and this is what happens. We contract, our center goes up, and I get tense. That's my reaction. But because I've done the work with a coach and sometimes in a program, but this one was with a coach, I was able to name the trigger. I was able to identify this emotion, this reaction in my body. I know how to recognize it. So when it happens, because I'm more skilled in identifying it, in the moment, I can feel the contraction,
Yeah.
but I don't need to react to it. I don't need to run the script.
Right.
Now I
Right.
have now I can choose to breathe, to change my posture. Yes, by the way, I'm still triggered, like this energy over here. I'm still a little bit
Oh,
agitated.
Nir, I was kidding. It's a great concept. It isn't stupid. It's amazing.
And no one will do that in a real conflict, right? So I'm still
Not
agitated,
usually.
but I know how to calm myself. I know how to respond in the moment. And you can't do it without being aware of your emotional map and not even triggering yourself in a safe environment with someone who on purpose will trigger you and help you practice regaining your posture, grounding yourself in who you are, and not just responding to every external trigger.
Right.
And when it comes to leadership, this is probably one of the most critical skills that leaders can acquire. especially those who are mostly brain dominated, they're solution dominated. Like I'm an engineer, and most of the engineers that I work with are solution dominated. But are we actually solving a problem, or are we reacting to our own triggers and our own
Yeah.
fears?
Yeah. Yeah. I think emotional intelligence really has a high correlation between job performance, leadership effectiveness, and employee well-being. And that's why it's an important topic to talk about, right?
Yeah, and I would say it's the undercurrent of so many of the things that we do that we can't see, we can't touch. It's not tangible,
Yeah.
but actually impacts the work in an extreme way. One of the paradigms that I'm trying to break sometimes in the programs and the coaching that I do is that including emotions in work is actually professional. Because many people say, oh, why are you reacting this way? It's not professional in the workplace. Well, then I ask them, do you feel that trust is critical to how their organization operates? The answer is always yes, of course. And I ask them, what would be the cost of not having trust within your organization? What's the waste in the system? Which is always a great question, a great coaching question to ask.
Yeah.
What's the waste in the system because you don't have trust or you won't have trust?
Right.
We're talking about extra meetings and extra effort and energy to recheck and re-verify everything, and the amount of work that it requires to synchronize everyone together because we don't trust one another. So the waste in the system is huge. Then I ask them, or then I tell them, to be more accurate, well, trust is a feeling.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Now, you built a model around trust. I think you call it building unshakable trust through change, which, I mean, gosh, since COVID, change has been just constant, and we've had a podcast on leadership resilience recently. But tell us about your model around building unshakable trust.
Sure. So trust is always challenged. I always say the easiest time to be a leader is when everything goes as planned. Today, what we need from leaders is not to be able to plan and execute. Most leaders can do that and will do that with one hand tied behind their back.
Yeah.
Here's the goal, here are the resources, here's the timeline, set the task between the team members, go execute. Easy, that's the easy part. Our life would be perfect if we could just execute the plan all the time. But we've seen in the last even 10 years, the amount of change is just growing, and now it's even growing more rapidly and more rapidly. So leaders deal with change more than ever. And it can be my project has changed, my team has changed, the financial of my company has changed, the environment has changed. Right now, we're at the end of 2024, there's war in part of the world, right? In more than one parts of the world. All that is impacting us. It is change.
Yeah.
There might be some family issues that might impact me or one of my employees. So there's always change that we need to adapt to and respond to. And every time during this change, our employees will look up to us for leadership, and they will
Yeah.
assess whether they can trust us or not. The sad thing is that usually with change, our logical leaders, those that lead with solutions and what I call the engineering mindset, will mostly address the technical part of change.
Mhm.
Has the goal changed? Did the resource change? Did the path to the goal change? Did the timeline change? Okay, let's recalculate the route like we're navigating a ship.
Yep.
And okay, recalibrate course, great, there. But one of the aspects of change, and change can be, I'm now assigned to a new team or to a veteran team, but I'm the new manager. And guess what? Most of the employees over there are older than me, they have more experience than me. Maybe the team, the components of the team has changed, maybe the goal has changed, or any other thing that could change in the workplace. All of these can be those catalysts, the triggers to the change. And now we have to take care of the emotional part of change.
Right.
Because what happens during change is people feel the lack of control, and then fear comes in and settles, and they're asking just one question: how is it going to impact me?
Mm.
And until they have a clear answer, or at least some hope regarding that, it will be very hard for them to execute efficiently, to be engaged, to be motivated, to give their 100 or even 120% to the job, because they don't feel safe or back to safety.
Right.
So let's take an extreme example.
Yeah.
Layoffs, mass layoffs. We were seeing
Right.
it around us, right? At Intel and other companies. If I don't know if I'm going to be next, how can I keep working and investing in this project, knowing that I might be out of the job tomorrow? How would I feed my family?
Right.
How would I make money? Will another company even hire me? Am I hireable? And if we're not addressing these fears, and I'm not saying we can solve these fears, I'm just talking about addressing, honoring those fears, the outcome, and I've seen this outcome more than once, employees then shift their focus inwards. Instead of being on the project, their team, what they need to do, they shift their focus inwards and starting to take care of themselves, taking care of their employability.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's human nature. That's the need for safety.
Yeah.
So the COPE model, which I've built, helps leaders address the emotional part of change, whatever that change is, and help the team regain more control, go into action, and then keep the momentum until this change is over and they're back to the normal, whatever normal is for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So COPE stands for confronting emotions. That's the C. O is finding opportunities. P is partnering. And E is to empower and communicate. So let me walk you through that really short. So confronting emotions is, instead of telling everyone, which is part of our culture, I would say, trying to fix everything. It's like with a kid that it cries, oh, you don't need to cry. Oh, it's not that a big of a thing, right? Why are you crying? He just told you something, or it's just a small scratch. Don't cry. We're so used to the don't cry. We're fixing. We're throwing those emotions away. We're invalidating those emotions. So leaders can come and say, "Oh, you don't have to worry. This won't impact us much. Don't worry about that. Just keep working. Just keep working." That never solved anything. It's just like when we're angry and someone tells us, "Oh, you don't need to be angry."
Yeah.
Has that
Calm
ever
down.
stopped us from being angry?
It's okay. Calm down.
Hey, calm down. Why are you angry? You shouldn't be angry. That's nothing. And our anger just keeps growing because of that. The same with the fear and the sense of lack of control. If they'll tell us you don't have to be afraid, I'll be actually more afraid and more concerned. Instead, confronting emotions means validating the other person's emotions. Doesn't mean agree, doesn't mean to sympathize, it means to empathize. It's just acknowledging the other person's emotions. And it's something in this language. Well, I know that we just announced this mass layoffs, and you probably feel a little bit worried about your job. And then just pause and allow them, just let it sink, because I just validated their emotions.
Yeah.
And then if we're vulnerable enough, which of course I always recommend, is share how you feel. Say, hey, I'm also concerned because I don't have all the answers right now for you. And I'm also in the dark a little bit, but I can promise you that when I'll have some news, I'll have more information. Everything I can share, I can't share everything, but everything I can share, I will share with you. So you will know that real time in order to make decisions about your next steps. So I'm validating their emotions. I'm not running away from them. Doesn't mean that I agree. I might think that, you shouldn't be afraid. Maybe I even believe that because our team is very solid, critical to the project, but it doesn't mean that they're not afraid. So
Yeah.
I'll use the word might. Hey, you might feel that you're afraid or that your job is insecure right now. That's okay. And just leave it. Don't try and fix it. Just acknowledge it. The second part, the finding opportunities, is related to creating hope. Einstein said that in the middle of every difficulty lies an opportunity.
Mm.
I use this metaphor many times, or this test case. When your boss comes to you, or you receive this email, hey, we're laying off 15% of our workforce. What's the amount of fear and tensity and stress that builds up in you if you just read that? My job's going to be impacted and I'm going to probably freeze.
Hmm.
What am I going to do now? Versus, hey, you received the same email, but in the last month, you received 2 or 3 job offers from other companies. Now, how does that change how you feel? It doesn't mean that
Right.
you won't freeze or you won't be afraid, but now you have hope.
Right.
And that hope creates energy. The intensity of the emotion is much smaller because you have hope. So in finding opportunities, when we help people, when they're in the low of lowest, where they're in fear, when they're in stress, when they're overwhelmed, when they're uncertain of the future, and we ask the question, so what's the opportunity now for us? And we start to find together the opportunities for me, for the team, for the organization, for the company, it creates hope.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because you can just see hope in a broader base, right? I mean, so we're talking about how do you create hope in an individual who's going through some kind of challenge. But let's just take when the economy is really bad and people are not hopeful and optimistic about the future, consumer confidence goes down, all of a sudden they stop buying, and it creates that cycle of then companies having to lay people off because people aren't spending the money and whatnot. Well, I remember um, uh, one year when people weren't optimistic on Black Friday, went to the mall. I love shopping on Black Friday. I know it's kind of silly, but a lot of people there, but no one had packages. And then the next year, when there was reason to be hopeful that the economy was turning around and being optimistic, I can tell you 8 out of 10 people had bags, not just one, but multiple bags where they've bought stuff because they were hopeful and optimistic that the economy was going to get better, that we're going to get raises, that their job was, maybe they were going to get new jobs, and so that may be some, just a tangible thing that everyone can relate to, just seeing what people are doing um, around holiday seasons and how they spend.
And it's not even in our it's unconsciously. We're doing
Yeah.
this unconsciously.
Yeah.
Everything we just said, all of this happens in the unconscious, in our body, in our feelings.
Right.
And if we're not aware of that, then we don't have control.
Right. Right.
Being aware of how you feel, being able to make decisions based on how you feel, now that is control, that is awareness, that is EQ.
Yeah. Got it. Love it.
So we have this opportunity, we have more hope. Now we need to help our employees regain their sense of control. How do we do that? We partner with them. That's the P in COPE, to start building plans and execute to a plan based on the opportunity. So, for example, I'll give you one example. When I was running Intel's coaching program with my partner, Lynette, COVID hit and we were in person. And then we had to switch from in-person coaching program to an online coaching program. Now, how do you do that? That is hard. How can we ask people to be 6 and 8 hours on Zoom? Unbelievable. So, of course,
Which is not fun.
not fun at all. At least that's what we thought then.
No,
Okay,
it's not fun. 8 hours on Zoom is not fun.
I agree. I try to stay away for more than 6 hours. So what we've done is we asked the question, what's the opportunity here? And the answer was, hey, instead of being locally, now we can expand to globally. We can have people from all countries, all continents to be in our cohorts to serve more people.
Right.
We can actually create these cohorts, which, by the way, some of them run to this day, 5 years after we launched the program, that still meet to this day every month because they're online. So that was a great opportunity.
Right.
Also an opportunity to remove a lot of the teaching and do more coaching and more interactive things during the session.
Right.
So we just need to find those opportunities. And once we find them, define them, and then partner with our employees to go and execute them. And that creates a sense of control. Oh, I'm part of something new. I'm part of taking this wagon out of the mud. And this new sense of inspiration. And we know employees who can take lead, who feel that they're part of something bigger than them, are more motivated, more engaged, more productive. So if they come up with the solutions, with the opportunities, and they're part of implementing those opportunities, that creates some positive momentum to go forward.
Right.
And after we've done that, then comes the last part, which is as important. That is, we need to keep that momentum going because inspiration has an expiration. We need to keep communicating through that change to employees what is happening. Otherwise, fear will start creeping back in. And to empower them, celebrate those small successes. Show them that there is progress. So that's the COPE model. And address the emotional part of trust, of earning trust.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, how can someone get in touch with you if they want to engage and have you bring some of these teachings or trainings or executive coaching capabilities?
So they can always go to my website, nirmegnazi.com, and probably you'll put a link in the show notes. And over there, you can read about my services, about my philosophy, but you can also get my ebook about building unshakable trust through change using the COPE model. And you can read about it there and read the ebook and actually apply a lot of the things that I just spoken about.
And is that on Amazon?
No, it's just an ebook on my website.
Okay.
You'll get it immediately to your inbox.
Well, free ebook, even better. And that's nirmegnazi.com.
Correct.
Awesome.
And the other way is LinkedIn, as always. Answering messages. I'm following LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I love the engagement on LinkedIn, connecting with people. And me and Jeff connected many times on LinkedIn and built on one on top of the other's posts and the insights and beautiful things that are there. So also connect with me on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Get with Nir on LinkedIn. Well, Nir, we've unfortunately run out of time. So hopefully you'll come back, and because there's probably about 50 other questions I wanted to ask you that we just didn't get to.
It's always fun. It's always fun, Jeff, together.
Yeah. So thank you.
And we never know where it goes. We start talking and it goes there and there and there. That's right. The conversation. I appreciate that.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you, Nir. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of The Leadership Puzzle. Be sure to tune in next time so that you can find out how you can complete your leadership puzzle.